So the first question I have for this series is, can James Harden do whatever he wants against the Warriors' defense? Specifically, is he not going to need screens to attack them? Because that's kind of the level that he's gotten to that has made him and this Houston team basically impossible to defend for a while, is the dude doesn't need a screen. He'll just hit the step backs, he'll get by you, whatever it is, and then he forces you to play that kind of shading defense, which is playing with fire, and I mean, Utah did have some success with it, but I would like to think that James Harden can figure that type of thing out. But the Warriors, while they were not as good of a defensive team as Utah this season, they may have the bodies to defend James Harden because, of course, they have so many tall dudes between Clay, Iguodala, KD, Draymond. And I do want to start with Iguodala because I think he will probably end up defending Harden a lot of the time. Now, I think they're going to start with the Bogut lineups, but as we know, the death lineup will always make an appearance. I don't think that lineup has played together as much this year. It's like 177 minutes throughout the regular season, but the net rating was plus 29 on Basketball Reference, so I'm assuming that lineup is still going to be its thing, and I think Iguodala can make James Harden's life kind of difficult because I believe that, sure, from a day-to-day standpoint, Iguodala is not that all-defense guy anymore, but I think for a specific series, and this would be the one, I think he can still be one of the, let's say, 5 best perimeter defenders in the league, and also one of the smartest. I do think he can still get to that level. So now it's a question of if I'm right on that one or not, because if I am, then I think Iguodala could definitely bother Harden. I mean, I don't think he would do anything stupid in terms of fouling him that much, and I think he would just do everything the right way, I guess. Now, if we get into the idea of would the Warriors do the shading defense or not, trying to influence Harden to go to one side of the floor, I could certainly picture it. I don't think they're going to get as ridiculous as having the defender be behind him. But, you know, the side thing and keeping him off of his left hand, I think they're capable of doing all those things. And then at that point, it's just relying on the rest of this defense that at times has been excellent to just rotate properly and swarm Harden when necessary and close out to shooters, whether it's Daniel House or Austin Rivers, Chris Paul, Eric Gordon, and whatever. And I think they're capable of doing that. It's just a matter of them actually doing it. I mean, defensively, they were asleep for most of the Clippers series, and you can say that for pretty much this entire season for the Warriors. Where were they, like 15th in defense or something like that? So it's going to be a matter of them kind of flipping the switch. It's also going to depend on how good really is Draymond defensively at this point. I mean, I don't think he's the guy from 3 years ago who can just fly around the floor and switch 1 through 5 and defend the low post and come out of nowhere for weak side blocks and all that. But can he still be very good and occasionally get to that level? I'd like to think so. So basically what I'm getting at is, if there's any team that can slow down Harden, it would be a team like this that has so many interchangeable guys of great defensive minds, long arms. All of them are pretty much above like 6'6", 6'7". Now, Houston, of course, can still set screens, and they would go to that if the Warriors' one-on-one defense and all the other stuff was actually bothering Harden a bit. And then from there, I think they're going to attempt to attack Steph Curry. Steph has gotten pretty damn good at hedging on the screen, but with how good of a shooter Harden is, I think even hedging on it would be enough for him to fire some threes up on you. So it's either that or you're going to have some guys fight over screens. I don't know. That's going to be an interesting thing where sometimes I think Steph could end up getting switched onto Harden because at this point you pretty much have to treat Harden like he is Steph Curry in a pick and roll. And I guess if Curry got switched onto Harden, maybe then we would really see the shading defense. Because I could picture a world where when Iguodala or Clay are defending him, they're just playing him straight up. Now that's pretty difficult to do, but again, maybe they could actually manage to do it. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see how they defend Harden. I mean, hell, could they even decide to trap him? I mean, that's pretty risky given Eric Gordon and Chris Paul's skills, but I guess it's an idea. But that's really going to be the heart of this series to me, is how the Warriors are going to defend James Harden. My gut feeling is they're going to have some success. I mean, hell, the dude shot 30-something% against the Jazz, and he had a couple of games there that were really bad. So while I don't think Utah figured out James Harden, they certainly knocked him down a little bit. So if they could do it, then I would hope the Warriors can. But again, it comes back to the idea of maybe Golden State's just not that good of a defensive team anymore. I don't know. Also, we got to talk about Andrew Bogut. Can he survive in this series? I think he can certainly have some life against James Harden in the screen, because Harden's not going to shoot pull-up mid-rangers, and I think Bogut can just kind of be big around the basket and force up some Harden floaters, and I don't think Bogut's going to get killed on the boards by Clint Capella or whatever. Not that I think Bogut is some great rebounder, but at least he can just box out. However, I think Chris Paul could destroy Bogut in pick and rolls, and the same thing can be said for Kevon Looney, or I don't think Damian Jones has really played in a while. So whatever big the Warriors want to put out there, I think they're going to have trouble against Chris Paul. I think they have a slightly better chance against Harden, but even then Harden's still going to beat them with the floaters, and he could also draw a lot of fouls on those guys. So again, I do think it is going to come down to the death lineup. I mean, in the series against the Clippers, Iguodala, he played 26 minutes, Andrew Bogut played 15, Kevon Looney played 18. So I would expect that to continue in this. And then it gets to the idea of, well, can Clint Capella make the Warriors pay for going small? I mean, if he was able to do that, I think it would mainly be on the offensive glass. Yeah, sure. I mean, between him and PJ Tucker, I think that's going to be huge for Houston in this series, similar to as it was in the conference finals a year ago, especially in that Game 7. They grabbed so many offensive boards in that first half, and they're going to have to do that a lot in this series. But do I think Capella is going to be good enough to where the Warriors are like, crap, we can't go with Draymond at the 5? No. Now, there's also the idea of Houston not playing with a center, and I'll dive into that more in a couple of minutes, but I think that could be something that they could go to. It's definitely a risk against the Warriors because that's their wheelhouse, but it's an idea. Now, some other things to point out. If I'm not mistaken, I do think the Rockets were doing some off-ball stuff for Harden by the time that Jazz series was towards the end. That could be an interesting thing if the Warriors prove to be pretty tough to score on in the typical ways that Houston does. Then I could picture some off-ball screens for Harden. That could be another way to go at Steph, or even somebody like a Sean Livingston. I mean, the Warriors have to go to their bench at least sometimes in this series. I mean, sure, everybody's going to play 40-something minutes, but I mean, I don't think Iguodala can last playing in the high 30s, so there are going to be little moments where Houston's going to have somebody to attack. But of course, the same thing can be said with the Warriors when Eric Gordon is out there, which is all the time basically. They can go at him. While Harden has gotten better on defense, I think you can still make him move along the floor. Sure, the Rockets are going to try to switch whenever it's him so he doesn't have to move too much. But even then, I do think you can still go at him, whether it's like slip screens or having his guy cut to the rim or having his guy start from the corner and then coming up the floor. Like, there's still ways you can make James Harden play defense. I guess I should talk about how the Warriors could score in this series because I haven't really addressed that as much. So before I get to anything, I think it's safe to assume the Rockets are going to dare Draymond and Iguodala to make shots. This isn't anything new. Teams have always been doing this. Iguodala shot very well from 3 against the Jazz. Draymond, the jumper could look ugly. He'll find ways to go off the dribble occasionally. They'll get him involved in offense more. But even so, there are going to be times when he has to hoist it up. You got to guess that Houston's going to be switching a decent amount of the time. They have ramped that up. They don't switch everything like they did a year ago. But I could picture for this series them going into a switch-heavy mode and I mean, I think the biggest thing when you're defending the Warriors is just don't do anything really stupid. Like, don't allow any of those easy cut plays. Don't miscommunicate on screens, which lead to wide open shots for Clay and Steph, and Kevin Durant, of course. Also, speaking of KD, when he goes into ISOs, can you at least bother him a little bit? Do the Rockets have a defender on this team who's really tall enough to make Kevin Durant sweat a little bit when he's trying to score from about 14 feet away? Well, in terms of height, I guess the best bet would be Daniel House. He's 6'7". That'd be the closest thing they have to Ariza. PJ Tucker is strong as hell. Harden is also really strong, and I mean, Gordon and CP are no slouches defensively either. But I think KD is still going to be able to do his thing. And I mentioned Daniel House. I think he could end up being kind of a big deal in this. Maybe House could basically be their Iguodala in this series. That's an interesting thing also, the idea of Houston not playing with a center, where the lineup would be probably James, Chris, Gordon, Tucker, House. That would be something. Maybe that's your answer to the death lineup. Just a quick look at the regular season lineup stats. That lineup played 1 minute in the regular season, and in the playoffs they played 11 minutes. So not much of a sample size, but that could be the move, honestly. I think that's Houston's best combination of the stuff you might need to go at the Warriors, but also playing the Warriors' game of going small might not be the best thing for you. So all that's going to be very interesting stuff. Now, I guess another thing we can look at is just the mental stuff with these two teams. So, obviously the Warriors just got pushed to a Game 6 against the Clippers. They should have won that series in 4 games. They won 57 games when they're talented enough to win 70. And you would hope that for this series they will be locked in 100% the moment it begins. But is there a chance that it takes a Game 1 loss or something before the Warriors finally say, all right, it's time to stop messing around? Maybe, I would hope not, but I guess it's not a ridiculous proposition. I guess there's also a chance that the Warriors just don't kind of like each other that much. I mean, they certainly like each other enough in the sense of they're not arguing with each other outside of that KD Draymond thing. But is there a chance that that argument and just the kind of edginess, I guess, that has been floating around the Warriors this whole year, whether it's the KD technical fouls or KD in general, really, maybe there's a chance that if this team is facing some adversity, they would mentally crumble a little bit. I guess it's an idea. In the sense of Houston, I do think they've been on a bit of a mission for the last, I don't know, month or two. And of course there's bleed over from losing this series, the way they did last year. So I could picture them coming out with a bit of a murderer's mentality of we're not scared of you and we actually think we're better than you. Now, I don't think everybody on the team would think that, but I do think Harden, CP, and PJ Tucker believe that. And hey, that type of stuff does matter somewhat. I mean, the Clippers were certainly not scared of him, and that series went to a Game 6. That wasn't the only reason, but this stuff, for whatever reason, that does matter in the world of basketball playoff series. I guess other things to look at before I inevitably say that I think the Warriors are going to win this is, what about the deep bench dudes? I mean, is there a chance Kevon Looney plays like 7 minutes a game and looks absolutely awful? Yep, certainly possible. Same things can be said for Nene or Gerald Green, or I'm still a little skeptical of Austin Rivers. Granted, he shot the ball pretty damn well against the Jazz. Kenneth Faried, he'll get some minutes, I'm going to guess, in this series, and maybe the Warriors could go at him. Yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme of this whole series, these little things do not matter as much, but they do matter at least a little bit. Anyway, I'm going to go with the Warriors in 6 or 7 games, with the caveat being, unless Steph Curry's ankles fall off, and even if they do, the Warriors could still win this, so yeah.